Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to this week's Q&A. It is Thursday night, and I actually had a completely different project planned for tonight, but the post office came and didn't deliver it. So now I figured I would just do the Q&As, crack a beer, and just see where this is at. And then I broke a glass. So then it was clean up the broken glass, crack another beer, and do the Q&A. So this one might be a silly one. We'll figure it out, but let's jump right in. We're going to start with Patreon, and I checked all of the platforms, and once again, all of the questions are only on Patreon, and that's totally cool. I just wanted to remind everybody this is platform agnostic. Anywhere you support, you get your questions answered. So anyway, jumping into Patreon, and let's go from the bottom of the list this time. Darren Coleman said that he had an arcade VGA card for MAME Arcade and wants to know what the best way to interface to a CRT TV via component video. He was looking at the RetroTech converter, the one that's made by somebody in the retro gaming community on eBay, but then saw a post I made that said the colors might not be accurate. This is one of those times where I just got to be honest. Many people just don't like me at all for things like this, but I'd rather tell the truth than have people not like me. It wasn't good. I tested it. I provided my feedback. I tested it quickly and said, it seems like it works. It's definitely not going to harm your equipment, that's for sure. I'll test it again in a bit. And when I went back to test it again, I found green tint was off. And then I believe he made some changes, and then the green tint was gone, but then there were some other weird issues with it. And then I took a look at it with Steve from HD Retrovision, and we found very specific reasons why it was not good at all. And in fact, that was one of the reasons, to be perfectly honest, why I haven't released the Steve and I talking about component or RGB to component converters yet, because I wanted to change that part, and I needed to re-record it, because at first I just thought I didn't want Steve involved in, us talking badly about another converter, because I didn't want people thinking that he was doing this with a motive. And then in hindsight, my own stupidity, I realized that we had just talked good about 3 other converters. So anybody that thought that of Steve would have been, very mistaken. But we did find good converters. And the one thing that I have to start with is that a generic converter is never going to be perfect. It's impossible. It's just one device. Never perfect with retro gaming signals. It's one device that needs to take the widest variety of refresh rates and resolutions and make it into something slightly different. So the ones that Steve found, we put them on a scope. I tested personally. The Shinybo one seemed great, and it's about the same price as the RetroTech, which is just another reason where, it's really hard to recommend a 3D printed case and a device that doesn't work that well, at least in some cases, versus a nice solid case, a mass-produced device that does work well. So that was the number one choice, and I believe it even worked in 480p. I don't know, you would have to make sure that the signal you fed it was a proper voltage though, because that is a SCART to component video converter. So the arcade VGA would be safe on like an RGB monitor to just tie H and V together. That specific card, not all RGB HV signals. But I don't know what the voltage would look like for SCART devices. So you'd have to dig into a lot more research for that. And you'd really want to be looking for a VGA to component converter. The one that I've used for years was the Key Digital line of stuff. And the Spider was the one that I used the most because it did everything you could imagine. And we eventually put that on a scope, and that was terrible too. So it's rough. My suggestion might be to, just find whatever VGA to component, some kind of mass-produced device that's VGA, or use a sync combiner and make sure that you're getting SCART voltage. You can't really go over 1 volt on the sync line, or else you could blow out the device. And that should be fine. The other one that performed good after configuring was those knockoffs of the Shinybo that come with potentiometers inside. And Steve and I's theory is that they pretty much ripped off and reverse engineered the Shinybo, but the Shinybo must have some kind of configuration and some kind of tweaking in the factory. And because the ripoff couldn't do that, they just threw pots in there And if you have a scope, you could tweak all of those and make it perfect. But if you don't, you have to eyeball it, and you're never going to get it just right. So if you have a scope, you want to save $40, and you wouldn't mind a fun little project. Once you set it, it's done. That one will work too. But once again, I mean, it won't do 480p, and that's a lot of extra work to put in. So for your specific scenario, you need to get VGA to component. You know, is there some type of card, some type of ATI-based card that you could use CRT-EMU driver or any of the Linux-based that have component video outputs? Because while I know you probably don't want to sell your arcade VGA, it's possible that the cheaper solution might be buy another card that supports component video out and migrate your setup to that, and then just sell the arcade VGA for whatever. And in fact, if it's one of the newer ones without the fan, I might even buy it off you as a spare. So I know that was probably a much longer and detailed answer than you'd wanted, and probably not the greatest to open up the Q&A with, but I just wanted to give real answers, especially if I ever talk negatively about anybody in the retro gaming scene, because I don't want to seem like some angry shit talker. The fact is that I provided all of the information to the developer, and while the green tint part was fixed, everything else was blown off as no one else complained, so it's not a big deal. And that's not cool. That's not how you're supposed to do things. So I don't ever recommend that one. I removed it from my site, and it just sorry. I mean, I gotta just be honest. And one more thing though, just to reiterate, if you had bought one of the retro techs, it will not harm any equipment. There is nothing voltage-wise wrong with it. It's not like you have to worry about blowing out your devices. I just want to make that clear. It's a safe device to use, and if you've already bought one, don't throw it out and buy another one if it works okay for you. But I wouldn't recommend it because it's like a 1 in 10 chance that your equipment and your setup will act weirdly with it. Color, tints, whatever else it might be. So, yeah, and Darren, if you end up selling the arcade VGA, let me know. Roy Miser had a question about FPGAs. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Please let me know. He wants to know how long it would take to recreate an N64 on an FPGA, just like Kevtris did on the SNES and now Genesis. I'm considering doing that one day because there's currently no way to perfectly emulate the N64. So, you know, that's up to the skill and experience of the person doing it. But even though I know pretty much nothing about FPGA and Verilog development, I feel pretty confident in saying that's hard. It's going to be a hard thing to do, and something like the MiSTer platform would be a better way for most people to go about it. Simply because, you know, you could take a look at the N64 motherboard and see what are the easy spots, and then really hone it down and get it down to the last remaining chips, which are going to be very hard. They'll probably need to be decapped and put up under a microscope, and there's no telling what different FPGA technology you'd need. Would this current setup of the MiSTer be good enough? Would you need anything else? So nothing's impossible, but it's certainly, you know, and nothing in FPGA is easy, just like writing an emulator is not easy. But if you're looking at the scope between writing like a cycle-accurate Atari 2600 versus a cycle-accurate N64, it's way different. It's like building a car versus building a rocket. You know, it's doable, but it's rough. So if you're really interested in this, or even if you're just getting into FPGAs, I would recommend just joining any of the MiSTer Discords, and just kind of paying attention to what they're doing and seeing where you could add your level of expertise. There are certainly people out there that do FPGA stuff for a living that could absolutely pull off something that's theoretically as complicated, but the direct question of how long do I think and could it be done? Probably a long time, and I don't know if the current DE10 Nano setup would handle it, but I would just suggest jumping in, going into the MiSTer forums or Discords, talking to the people there, seeing where you could add your level of expertise, or if you're just a complete beginner that really wants to get into it, maybe ask where you could help. Maybe somebody's got a very easy chip that no one's had time to do yet, but you could just start from there. But it's a good question. I just, as a fan of this stuff, I wouldn't hold my breath for an N64 core anytime soon. But if you're a developer looking to start it, there's definitely other things that could be done on the way there. Jason D wanted me to once again tell the model Plextor burner I have that Voltar recommended. So the exact model is PX-880U-11. So Peter Xavier-88 United-11. That's the external version that's USB. When I took the drive out and put it inside my tower, it was the same model number but minus the -11. And I love it. I have no complaints whatsoever. It's fast. I've never had a bad burn. I have the Taiyo Yuden media, and I've never had any of the devices I use not take one of the burns, which is the opposite in most other things. I've used crappy media that worked once or not at all. I've had burners that no matter what media you use won't work in like a Sega CD or something. So it's definitely a good model. I'm not sure if it's the best of all time, so if anybody has access to other Plextor drives that are known to be some of the best or like this one, please post. Maybe us subscribers could all take advantage and just grab one before they go up in price. And speaking of price, mine was $34 after shipping, and I've seen these on eBay for over $300. So, you got to be careful of the scalpers. You can still get them cheaper, and hopefully maybe somebody listening will have access to this stuff and could help us all out. I would love to buy a backup one. In fact, a lot of my equipment that I've been using that's either hard to come by or just not in the mainstream, I've been buying at least duplicates of just to make sure. I think I have 2 spare DataPath Vision capture cards just for all of, just in case. So it would be really great if I could pick up a backup and other people could just get one themselves. So anybody out there, please let us know. Pete from MMonkey had a really great tip. He said that someone had asked about a good modern PSU for PAL regions, and he said en.retrogamesupply.com, and that is the place that he's had a bunch, and the reviews sound promising. I remember buying one from them for my Turbo Duo or PC Engine Duo. I think it was a PC Engine Duo, and I bought the supply from them, and it was not UL rated, but it worked, and I definitely didn't put it on a scope because I didn't have one then, but whatever load testing I did, it seemed okay. But the problem when you have cheap power supplies like that aren't UL rated is that there's a much higher chance of them being swapped at some point during sales. So it's a very common problem with anything that has a shared case design out of Chinese manufacturing, where you'll have a company that makes sure that they get 1,000 of the good ones, and they say, all right, well, we need another batch right away, and the manufacturer sees that they're not UL rated and just sends them anything. Now, that obviously could still happen no matter what, but if you have that UL sticker on there and that happens, that's a big deal. That company can get into some serious trouble for that. And that was something I dealt with in the medical hardware industry as well. So it's more stringent with medical, but so that's the only pause I have. Now, that was 5 years ago. Maybe Retro Game Supply changed everything, and it's all UL rated, and the one I got did perform properly. So I'll give that recommendation, but I definitely just wanted to put that out there. I've now ordered 2 more of the Triad power supplies that Firebrand X recommended, which are UL rated, and 1 more of the Power Plus ones. I just don't know if I can get any of those in the UK. So if anybody else has any other links, or if anybody has ordered one, please, actually, Pete, you said you've just ordered one. So we'll wait for you, Pete. We'll wait for you to let us know if there's a UL sticker on it. And at the very least, maybe stick your multimeter on it while your console's on and see what the voltage is under load. Lars Olschlager had a great question. He wants to do some basic lag testing. So he wants to use a PS1 with the sync on composite RGB cable, then also grab the composite video signal and send it to the flat screen. Is this a usable method, or would this put extra load on the console? So the methodology that you're using is solid, but don't use both composite video. So modify the cable or maybe just pick up another cable to have sync on Luma, and then use composite video for the TV. So you do not want to put double load on that. I mean, for one test, it probably will be fine, but I blew out a Super Nintendo that way in 30 seconds of testing. So be very careful. I wouldn't do two things off of the composite line, but just grab another cable, or if you could modify yours, move it over to a different pin or something, then you should be completely fine. And I think that's a great method, and that's in fact one that I'll be showing in an upcoming video to demonstrate another cool thing that I'll be doing a video on. But I will be modding, I think it's already done actually, a Super Nintendo will have a little RCA connector hanging out the back where it's just connected to composite video, and then a different cable plugs into the multi-out, and then they're both going to CRTs just to show you the different lag methods and the different things going on. So you could test scalars this way if you have two CRTs. You could test flat screen versus composite, so now you're lag testing your flat screen. Although the Time Sleuth is infinitely easier to do that, but this is essentially free if you already have the components. Just stick your CRT to the right side of the flat screen, composite to that, RGB out to your scalar to the flat screen, or to the OSSC, I would hope at least, or at least to HD Retrovision cables. But point being, when you have the CRT on composite and the flat screen through the other zero lag method, now you can tell the exact difference of your flat screen. So I like the methodology, just don't have both things coming from composite video. I'd hate to have you kill your PlayStation, which definitely costs more than another cable. So even if you get some cheap, I mean, you know, this is the time for a cheap knockoff cable. Maybe buy one of those very cheap AliExpress ones that are total garbage, but cut open the connector side, have the composite pigtail coming out of that, you have sync going to Luma, and there you go. For $5, you could have yourself a cool little test rig. Juan Pablo, a new subscriber from Chile. Hello, Juan. Welcome. He said he has a hard time finding PVMs over there. So as an alternative, he modded a 14-inch Sony Trinitron, which I'm sure looks great. It works great when it plugs in a SNES, but when he tries to connect a PC with the latest CRT EMU drivers, he gets like an inverse color image. So that could be a lot of different things. That could be anything, you could not be running at the correct resolution. Your refresh rate could be just slightly off because PVMs are built like tanks. So those will take any 15 kilohertz-ish refresh rate signals, as well as sync. It could be the way you're doing the sync combining of the horizontal and vertical. You might need to do some kind of other circuitry. Whereas with the PVM, you could, I mean, I'm generalizing, but with the PVM, you could stick H and V together and drop voltage down with some resistors, and most PVMs will be fine. But when you're going into the jungle chip of the RGB monitor, you very strictly need to have RGBS the way normal 75 ohm video signals are. So that's going to be a rough one if you don't have an oscilloscope. I would just maybe talk to other people who are in, who have the same setup. So the same video card running the same software and seeing what they're using to go from RGBS, so originally VGA, to SCART, and see if they need to do anything different, because you might only just need a custom built cable, or it could just be as simple as software settings. So that was a great question. Sorry I don't have a solid answer for you. And Juan said, sorry for my broken English. Your English was perfect, better than mine sometimes. So welcome, and ask away if you have any other questions. Next, Keith McGuire said, I know this is speculation, but do you think Analog would ever re-release the NT Mini, the NES and Famicom one, in the same form factor, and I'm assuming price range, as the Super NT and Mega SG? Meaning a smaller machine with a plastic shell so it's less expensive. Well, first and foremost, I have no affiliation with Analog whatsoever. The only person from that company I've ever spoken to on a regular basis was Kevin. I've exchanged some emails with Chris and never heard back from Ernesto. So I don't know anything about them or what they do or anything else. And to be honest, I'm always very respectful of not asking questions I shouldn't be asking when I talk to Kevin. I like him a lot, and I think it's awesome that I get to go hang out with him sometimes. So I stick to just general nerd talk and teasing each other like I do everybody. So my 100% speculation, no better or worse than anybody listening, would be that no, they would not re-release it in its current form. They would release it without the analog output, without the extra ability to add the extra cores, and possibly with a plastic shell and cheaper, if they would do that at all. But to be perfectly honest, and remember, I'm coming from a hardware design background as well as an IT background and general nerdiness for my entire career. So I don't understand why they've done a lot of why they have or haven't done a lot of the things that they've done. And that is not just a random speculation. That is knowing the gaming industry, knowing retro gaming, knowing computer hardware and all that stuff. So who knows what's coming next. The only thing I would like to see on a personal level is the individual developers getting more recognition. So when a lot of these big publications keep saying, analog this, analog upgraded that, analog added this, when you see the behind the scenes stuff, which is everything that's in all the interviews I've done with Kevin, you see how much work that he's done. You see the beautiful work that Ernesto's done on the case. And I believe he's worked on a lot of the things around the cores. I don't think he's worked on any of I think the cores are 100% Kevin. I just really wish that the individuals would get more recognition for their work, because it really isn't, when you read like the Engadget review, it makes it seem like Analog is this huge company with these teams of people, getting these miraculous hurdles to work like they do, and it's not. It's a few people working very, very hard that deserve their recognition. So that wasn't that wasn't your question at all. I guess maybe I've just had a few too many of these and just talking honest. But yeah, so to answer your question directly, I have no clue. I don't know what to see. There's a lot I would like to see, but a realistic request from just me is give the people who do the work the recognition they deserve, which has nothing to do with your question. Marcus Eli Hastrup asked, would I recommend a Sony PVM-20L5 as a first or possibly only RGB monitor? So I want to explain a few things, but the direct answer is yes, absolutely. No doubt, yes. But just to elaborate a little bit more, if you don't already have a good high-quality CRT, whether it's a great quality consumer grade that you modded or anything in between, I just pick up anything. Depending on your scenario, I usually recommend 20 inches. Some people, the 14s actually fit better for their setup, but if possible, 20-inch CRT, anything, any PVM, any BVM, anything at all, I think will make a difference in people's retro gaming setups, and they'll like them. Which versions you want, what features you want, will you actually notice or care about a difference between a $1,500 BVM versus a $500 PVM? That's up to you in your own situation, but as long as you have something. So if you're asking the question because you have the ability to pick up a 20L5 and are wondering if it's a good move, once again, my answer is go for it, as long as the price matches the condition. So even if it's got really bad burn-in and it barely works, if you're getting it for $50, grab it by all means. And vice versa. If it's been recapped by somebody that knows what they're doing and calibrated, and they're going to charge over $1,000, that's also okay, as long as it's been legitimately taken care of the way that I just explained. So there's definitely not much nothing bad about the overall situation of buying a good condition or a matching to the price condition 20L5. Definitely go for it. And I've ended up buying, selling, and trading so many monitors over the past few years, and I've loved every one of them. And if I had the space to, I would have held on to every one just for the hell of it. I'm sure even monitors I would have left on a shelf for 10 years, there would have been one time where I said, hey, I want that monitor for that thing. So just if you have the opportunity to pick something like that up, go for it. And if you think it's a bad move, contact me. I guarantee I can help you get that sold, as long as you didn't pay some astronomical price for it. So I would confidently buy it and enjoy it. Tofu Man was posting in regards to something talked about last week of testing flat screens with PAL signals, so NTSC flat screens. Tofu Man said, wouldn't you be able to use the Time Sleuth to generate PAL signals and send that through the OSSC with an HDMI to VGA converter? So Yes and no. I don't. I guess I could do Time Sleuth, the 560p, or the 560p into an HDMI to VGA converter, into the OSSC, into the TV to see if that would work. Or I could just do the 560p PAL signal through the Time Sleuth. Those are all pretty good ideas, but the reason I wouldn't have done something like that, and the reason I don't just run in the other room now and test, is because I would want some kind of control test. So I would want a PAL console that outputted the same resolution that I'm testing, or anybody could do that. I don't mean I have to do it. I would want someone to test this first. So take a PAL Wii, let's say, and use its progressive scan output, put that into a TV and test its compatibility, and then have the same signal on the Time Sleuth to match and see if that works. And if the answer is yes, cool. But I just don't think the Time Sleuth was designed for regions. I think it was simply designed for resolution and the matching refresh rates. So it's a good question. It's something I'd like to know the answer to just for peace of mind. But until somebody does the control test, I would just, especially if you're looking to buy a TV based on this information, I wouldn't go by just that yet. So. And if anybody's listening, hey, do you have a PAL console and a Time Sleuth and you want to do the test for us? And lastly, the GOAT posted in reference to Firebrand X's comment last week, the Barry Manilow wardrobe line is from the Breakfast Club. I'm not sure how it applies to you, though. Neither do I, but it was funny, so cheers to Firebrand X. Well, that's it for this one. As always, if you're posting any questions, just please post wherever the latest video in any of the supporter pages are. The way this is all set up, there's just no way I can go back to any of the older episodes. So just go to the latest Q&A post, wherever you're subscribing, post your question there, and I'll get to it next week. And if for whatever reason I miss your question, please ask again. Sometimes I do things a day early, like today, or sometimes I just miss it. So if I ever missed anybody's question, please just re-ask and I will definitely get to it. And if it's something important, of course, always feel free to just contact me directly. But as always, thank you so much for everybody's support. I genuinely mean it when I say that, and I also mean it when I say a lot of the stuff people are supporting by donating to this channel are a lot of the behind-the-scenes projects where sometimes I take a big part in it, sometimes I'm only a very small piece of the puzzle that just helps. But all of these things would benefit everybody in the retro gaming community eventually. For you personally, maybe you'll be interested in 1 out of 10, but hopefully that's enough to continue the support. Because it really is, at least I think, making a difference. And I'd really like to keep doing this and growing everything that I've been working on at the same time. So thank you very much for all your support, and I'll see you next time.